93.3 HD3.
What happened on Capitol Hill? I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. That's what many lawmakers in Congress are asking as they search for answers in the January 6th riot.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says as committees dig into what went wrong, it's important to stick to the facts.
There are still members of the Senate Republican minority who are willing to continue the campaign of misinformation, deception, and conspiracy that helped fuel the attack on January 6th in the first place.
There's also talk of creating a commission to conduct an independent probe similar to the panel that investigated the September 11th attacks. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell says Speaker Nancy Pelosi's plan for Democrats to have a 7-4 advantage and more power is unfair.
An inquiry with a hardwired partisan slant would never be legitimate in the eyes of the American people.
Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
Meanwhile, Facebook has announced it's banning all accounts linked to Myanmar's military, as well as ads from military-controlled companies in the wake of the Army's seizure of power on February 1st. The social media giant said it was treating the post-coup situation in Myanmar as an emergency. Plus, Texas's governor is vowing to overhaul the state's electric grid operator after days of extreme winter weather crippled power for millions.
No power meant no heat, and in some cases, no water for days. Governor Greg Abbott says the manager of power in the state came up way short.
ERCOT repeatedly assured the state and the public that ERCOT was prepared. Those assurances turned out to be false.
He blamed power suppliers of all sources. Abbott also said it was outrageous that electric operators sent sky-high utility bills to customers because demand soared.
The state is already investigating multiple electric providers about these spikes.
But utility companies have said they're just following orders from utility regulators.
That's Fox's Rob Dawson reporting. America is listening to Fox News.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.
Half a day. This is Alicia Bloss from Security Title, reminding you that your 2020 property taxes are now due and payable. You may not know that you can pay your taxes online at pay.guam.gov. All you have to do is follow these simple steps. Register, log in, get a PIN, and pay. If you purchased a property after March 2nd, 2020, you will likely not receive a tax bill in your name, but you will still owe the tax. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Golf legend Tiger Woods was injured in a serious crash Tuesday near Los Angeles. Fox's Matt Finn has the latest.
An overnight message on Woods' Twitter account revealed the golf legend had a long surgical procedure on his lower right leg and ankle. The hospital's chief medical officer saying Woods suffered significant orthopedic injuries, detailing broken bones and the insertion of a rod, pins, and screws. If all goes well, it will be months before Woods can put full weight on his legs and up to a year for recovery, according to former pro golfer Bill Mallon, who's now an orthopedic surgeon. Infection is a concern, and the development of arthritis at the ankle is a longer-term concern, but if the wind is fair, he will play golf again.
Woods was driving shortly after 7 a.m. Tuesday when his SUV crossed a median and veered across 2 lanes before hitting a curb, a tree, and landing on its side in the brush. Meanwhile, the government has dropped drunken driving and reckless driving charges against Bruce Springsteen on Wednesday, admitting that the rocker's blood alcohol level was so low that it didn't warrant the charges. The judge fined him $500 and $40 in court costs. Plus, final and best offer is the most popular phrase in real estate today. Fox Business Network's Lydia Hugh explains.
More than half of home buyers face bidding wars, according to Redfin. And a survey by the National Association of Home Builders shows it's the primary reason people who want to buy a home have not been successful. Motivated by low interest rates, buyers are quick to snatch up the limited supply of houses on the market. Most homes are under contract in less than 2 weeks, says Redfin's chief economist, Daryl Fairweather.
That is a record. It's the fastest we've ever seen homes sell, and that just indicates how competitive the market is. If you put that offer in first, it does give you an edge, and sometimes homes go off the market before people even have a chance to see them.
Lydia Hu, Fox News.
I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
76 Circle K, the Subaki Tower, and Spa Ayalam bring you another staycation. We are celebrating Mom and all she does. Win a 2-night stay at the luxurious Subaki Tower, get pampered by Spa Ayalam, and enjoy a delicious lunch and dinner at Casa Oceano. All you have to do is purchase $35 or more in 76 fuel and enter to win a staycation fit for a mom. The more you gas, the more chances of winning. Visit 76circlekguam.com or any Circle K location for more information.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
On demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Mezcla presents Live Music Saturdays, featuring the music of Jack Larimer, Mungit Chow, drinks, and great service. Mezcla Bistro in Hagåtña. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I couldn't be any more enthusiastic about that show opening, no matter what. It's a proper way for any show to start. It happens every day here on Tall Tales. It tips you off that this is a conservative, Constitution-oriented radio program. And if that's where your head is at, you're in the right place. If it's not where your head is at, you're in the right place because you need some education. Okay, let's start right out with Zemi Ikotny. I think it was an old Dinah Washington song, What a Difference a Day Makes. Yeah, looking at this editorial page here, what a difference a day makes. And you'll understand why I'm saying that when I get into the card. But, you know, the Daily News is not generating local editorials, but at least they're generating editorials that make a whole lot of sense. This one is entitled Celebrate Limbaugh. And the author is Bob Vanderplatz, the president and CEO of the Family Leader. Wow! Yeah, and this is what he says. I didn't always agree, but he sparked dialogue. Now, just to tip off, he's not talking about me. He's talking about Rush Limbaugh, but it would work just as well. There was a time when many Americans and many political conservatives in particular felt they had no voice in the national dialogue. Television's major networks dominated the discussion from their headquarters in Washington and New York. But when Rush Limbaugh came on the scene in 1988, he changed all that. Limbaugh's groundbreaking syndicated radio program demonstrated long before the advent of social media that it was possible to raise an alternative voice to the mainstream news, a voice independent of TV conglomerates and gatekeepers. What's more, Limbaugh's soaring ratings prove there exists an audience hungry for thought, opinion, and discussion that goes beyond the popular culture narrative. Limbaugh was thus a pioneer, not just for talk radio, but for the First Amendment and the voice of the common man. Even though many disagree with Limbaugh's politics, we all owe him a debt of gratitude for blowing the doors off a new channel of discussion and opening the dialogue to everyone. If it weren't for Rush Limbaugh, I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now. And I'm happy to say that Rush, may he rest in peace, did the warm-up for my show. One of the reasons that I generously accepted the position when Ray offered it to me, you know, Bob, if you take this job, Rush Limbaugh will be doing your show warm-up. Well, I guess I could. It really would be good for Rush's career, wouldn't it? Yeah. Many Christian talk programs in particular wouldn't even exist today were it not for Limbaugh's success. Christian radio would still be limited to sermons and songs. But instead, radio stations realized the benefit of capturing even a slice of Limbaugh's audience share and offered new hosts and new voices opportunities to join a new, more democratic discussion of the issues. Now, the left hates this. You know, more democrat. Well, it can't be democratic. It doesn't come from us, right? He doesn't even disagree with most of our stuff. How can that possibly be democratic? Even Limbaugh's critic and political opponents benefited from his pioneering popularity. Alternative, progressive talk hosts were also given new opportunities, even if only to rebut Limbaugh. And while talk radio remains primarily a medium for political conservatives, who can doubt that hosts like Stephen, I'm going to pronounce his name correctly, Stephen Colbert. He doesn't know how to pronounce it. He's a candidate for the Robert Mueller Trophy. If you got a name that sounds kind of clunky, don't pronounce it the way you're supposed to pronounce it. See if you can add something to it. That's what my Uncle Roy Klitzkie told me. Let's see, Stephen Colbert, Bill Maher, and Jon Stewart, among others, didn't directly benefit from Limbaugh demonstrating the profitability of combining entertainment and political commentary for American audiences. For that matter, do we think the more conservative voices like Sean Hannity, Steve Deese, Glenn Beck, Ben Shapiro, or Bob Klitzkie would have reached such heights had Limbaugh not first blazed the trail? In Iowa, where I live, and where we host the first in the nation presidential caucuses, we often pride ourselves on running candidates through the gauntlet of retail politics, meaning these candidates have to meet the people face to face in their hometowns, answering their questions, if the audience want that first win on the way to becoming president. It's a critical piece of our political process that cannot and should not be replaced by big show campaign rallies, polls, and political ads. Like that picture of Hillary Clinton walking down the street with some people and walking behind her to keep the crowd away from Hillary. Remember that one?
Yeah, it was all about polls for that one.
Yeah. Yes, it's messy to bring political discussion to every commuter's radio, to living rooms and dining room tables. In Iowa, we're used to it because of the caucuses. But as a country, we're better off for it and for having more of it. It's a safeguard on our democracy to have the people actively engaged in the discussion, even if they're wrong some of the time. Now, if I could just promote the show a little bit here, Jose. You know, sometimes callers call here and they disagree with me. Obviously, they're wrong. But I always protect a caller's right to be wrong on Tall Tales. Even if you're wrong, you can call Tall Tales. In fact, we kind of welcome it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, no, I can't necessarily offer Rush a mega ditto, but I've watched how the people are involved, engaged, and willing to challenge the status quo today, in part because of him. And for that, I do offer Rush a mega thank you. Wow. Why couldn't they have been running stuff like this all the time? A real editorial. Not a local editorial, but, you know, it just goes to show you that when you pull yourself away from this compulsion to bash Donald Trump, all kinds of good things can happen, even in the daily news. Okay, let's take a peek at the Post. New VA chief must take better care of veterans who call Guam home. Approximately 24,000 of the nearly 60,000 people who call Guam home are military veterans. That's 15% of our population. And yet the services of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs provided to local veterans have been perceived as lacking, if not dismal. VA medical spending on Guam per capita is the lowest in the country, stated Vice Speaker Tina Munya Barnes in a February 24 letter signed by Senators Tony Atta, Frank Blas, James Moylan, Talina Nelson, Joe San Augustine, and Jose Terlahi and Mary Torres. No, not Mary Torres. To access quality health care, Guam veterans need to travel, with the closest being Hawaii. Barnes wrote to the new, it sounds like we're back to telemedicine, doesn't it? Telemedicine and abortion. Guam's veteran needs to travel, with the closest being Hawaii, Barnes wrote to the newly confirmed Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Dennis Richard McDonough. Guam veterans also do not have access to an office on the island where they can submit their claims. Currently, Guam's veterans must submit their claims through Hawaii, either through the mail or online, the island senators wrote. Guam also does not have an inpatient VA facility, forcing veterans to travel to Hawaii to avail of the services that the VA is supposed to provide to all who qualify. I hope that under your leadership, we can finally do right by our veterans, the local senator wrote. This is not the first time the VA has heard about shortcomings of services for military veterans who live on Guam. But that's what's new is under the Biden administration, the new VA chief has vowed to restore veterans' trust in the department. After all, there is no more sacred obligation nor noble undertaking than to uphold our promises to our veterans, whether they came home decades ago or days ago, McDonald stated during his Senate confirmation hearing last month. The Senate confirmed his nomination on February 8. McDonald served in the Obama administration as the 26th White House Chief of Staff from February 2013 to January 2017. He was the principal deputy national security advisor from October 10 to January 2010 to January 2013. It's time for a new VA leadership to look after the well-being of veterans living on Guam. Geographic distance should not be an excuse to treat Guam-based veterans as if they're an afterthought. I don't disagree with anything that this editorial says, but I'm going to go with one better. I'll see your Secretary of Veterans Affairs and raise you one U.S. Congress. This is exactly the kind of thing that we should be working on within the American empire and get off the silly separatist thing that gets us nowhere and does no one any good at all, except maybe Hope Cristobal, because it gives her a platform to engage in her public speaking talents.
It gets her on tall tales.
It gets her on tall tales, yeah. So what we ought to be doing is we ought to be putting together a comprehensive amendment to our Organic Act that deals with veterans residing in this territory. Because we probably have more veterans in this territory. I suspect Puerto Rico has more. We probably have more per capita. So what we need to do is put together a comprehensive amendment to our Organic Act that talks in terms of Veterans Hospital, Veterans Clinic, Veterans Claims, etc., and put it together and lobby it through Congress, so that we're not dealing with every new secretary as though the problem just arose after he was sworn in. That's my 2 cents worth on the subject. Okay, pretty good editorial, no blue star on this one. It does, of course, point out to something that I have commented on many, many times, that our biggest problem here is how many of us there are and where we are. There are 160,000 of us, and we're over 3,000 miles from the next jurisdiction that flies the American flag. That requires special efforts on our part to be more deeply included within the American empire, not be thumbing our nose at it and saying, "Oh, we want our sovereignty." Okay, let's go from there to the card. I've got my program notes here for today. Top item on the card is called Rocky IV, Post versus PDN. Now, you remember the story of Rocky, especially Rocky I, and it was so successful that there were 2 sequels afterwards, right? Well, this is the next one in the line. But the basic plot of Rocky was that here's this average guy, everyman, right, who's a pretty good boxer, a fair boxer, but a lot of heart. And he works hard and gets a few breaks, and he gets a shot at the championship, and he knocks the champ out. Okay, take that same imagery and look at the card. Post versus PDN. Yeah, the PDN is crawling around on the canvas, and the Post is prancing around the ring, holding up his right glove as a sign of victory, and well-deserved it is. Next item on the card, the governor teaches a new lesson about cost-cutting. You know, when tax collections are down, the governor shows us exactly how to handle that, and governor versus the budget. And we've got Therese and GMH dueling over nurses' salaries to see who could raise them the fastest. And then we've got Biden versus the kids. The nice thing about this story is that it features Rachel, I always forget her last name, Rachel Levine, who was born Richard Levine. That's Biden's new Assistant Secretary of Health. And then I have a sort of a fundraiser that shows that maybe our college campuses are not beyond salvation. And I'm probably going to get to Sabina and Tello trying to put Ghostbusters out of business today. So that's what the card looks like for today. I'd start right out with Rocky IV, Post versus PDN, but I may have someone holding in the green room here. Just let me take a look here and see what I got. Another Joe already? Another Joe? I haven't even started the card.
I'm so sorry, Uncle Bob. It's just that you said there's only 2 sequels after Rocky. There's a Rocky with when he fought.
I can't tell you how grateful I am for that. Thank you very much, Joe. That's really important. How many Rockies there are?
I think it's to infinity and beyond.
Aye.
But to your point.
Okay, Rocky, whatever it is. Anyhow, the idea is the Rocky theme, not how good you are at counting the number of movies called Rocky there are. So we'll give another Joe the championship on that one, okay? All right. This is Post versus PDN, and a little historical background here. The PDN had, ever since I moved to Guam, the PDN had always been almost the only game in town. For years and years, it was the only newspaper in town, going all the way back to when it was the Guam Daily News. It cost a dime. The editor, publisher, typesetter, chief cook, bottle washer, and parking lot attendant was Joe Murphy. Was a great guy. You know, having too much staff was not the Guam Daily News' problem. And Joe wrote a column called Pipe Dreams, which later on couldn't be called Pipe Dreams because, you know, the tobacco mafia, anti-tobacco mafia wouldn't allow it. But Joe wrote some good columns, and for the time, and et cetera, the number of people on the island, Guam Daily News, that was it. And then the Guam Daily News in 1970 was sold out to a guy named Chin Ho from Honolulu. Not Chin Ho Kelly from Hawaii 5-0, just Chin Ho, that was all. And I think it was in the same year that Chin Ho sold out to Gannett. And of course, Gannett has been the big gorilla in the newspaper business. Gannett was really, really big at that time. Others have challenged the Daily News, and when Gannett took it over, it became the Pacific Daily News instead of the Guam Daily News. Others have challenged the Daily News, but nobody ever really got to first base. We had a paper called the Okinawa Morning Star in 1970. When it became apparent that that Okinawa was going to revert back to Japan, that the occupation was going to end, and a few people from Okinawa, expats, migrated to Guam to set up business, and we tried to publish the Okinawa Morning Star and fly it down here. It didn't work worth a darn. And then the next challenger that came along was the Guam Tribune, which was a Mark Pangilinan paper that was a natural successor to Mark Pangalinan's Shopper, which carried ads for all of Mark's enterprises. So he stuck a little news in there, and the Shopper became the Guam Tribune. The next challenger was the Marianas Variety, which was printed in Saipan and flown down here for a long, long time. Oftentimes not in a very timely fashion. So they were here. They tried hard, but the Daily News was still the big boss. Back a day around the turn of this century, you could tell who the winners and losers were in the political game by looking at the editorial page of the Daily News. That's how we counted winners and losers. So the Marianas Variety struggled along, and then they finally built a printing capability here, kept working on their game, but still the Daily News was the big gorilla as far as news was concerned. But then Cortec bought Mariana's Variety from the Yunus family in Saipan and renamed it the Guam Daily Post. And things really started to change fast. They got some really good reporters. They got Mindy Fothergill, Mindy Uggan to be the big boss. And they really gave the Daily News some competition. My understanding is that the Daily News circulation went from 30,000 down to less than 10,000. Yeah, in a relatively short period of time. And that the Post is up around 17,000. So you compare the advertising in the two papers. Post gets the advertising. Obviously, they got greater penetration. From the standpoint of editorials, you know where the action is. The Post has 157 blue stars. I don't think the Daily News has even put out an editorial in a year. So the Post, the PDN is on the ropes, and the Post just keeps punching, just like Sylvester Stallone in whatever Rocky movie you like, right? So here's a story in today's Post. Kaleo Moylan buys Pacific Daily News from Gannett Company, returning PDN to local ownership. That is a stunner. Yeah. Former Lieutenant Governor, Senator, uncle of James Woke Moylan and local businessman Kaleo Moylan has purchased the Daily News from subsidiaries of Gannett. The acquisition is scheduled to be finalized in April. I'm excited to begin a new era in local leadership of the island's leading news and media organization, Moylan said. It's time that Jim Moylan got some press. My family and I grew up reading the PDN, as many in the community have. It's a privilege to be part of the next evolution of that tradition. Moylan's acquisition of the Pacific Daily News returns the media company to local ownership after 50 years of corporate stewardship by Gannett. Stewardship being a synonym for driving it into the ground. Guam is my home, Moylan says, and I view this acquisition as a way to make our island and region stronger. With all the challenges we face today, an informed community is key to moving in the right direction. The Daily News started its local ownership in 1949 when former Governor Joseph Flores bought the Guam News from the Navy. Flores then named the newspaper the Guam Daily News. In 1971, the newspaper was purchased by a Honolulu group, then subsequently bought in the same year by Gannett, Inc., and named the Pacific Daily News. Moylan confirmed that Rendrati Celis Limtiaco has been with the PDN for 30 years and as president and publisher for the last 2 years, will continue her role as publisher and will add to her responsibilities the duties of executive editor. Moylan added that if she doesn't start writing editorials, we're going to can her. The news organization has a fine staff with a great amount of shared knowledge, Moylan said. The daily operations will be retained under the leadership of Ree Limtiaco. Ree has the experience and vision to guide the PDN forward. Who's been in charge for the last 13 years? Interesting thing, Jose, when you got a baseball team that's in the cellar, and the general manager wants to do something about it, he can't trade all his players the same day. He can't go out and buy new players, but he can certainly bring in a new manager. And sometimes that's all it takes. Anyhow, Moylan says Ree has the experience and vision to guide the PDN forward. Limtiaco, who began her career as a who began her career as a reporter. I was going to say as a paper boy, but that wouldn't work out very well, would it? Yeah. Everybody who ever became the president of any major bank started out as a messenger, right? And worked his way up.
Every chef was a dishwasher.
Yeah, that's right. As you were said she is excited to be leading the company under Moylan's ownership. Kaleo is an astute businessman, a local leader, and a good friend of almost 40 years. Limtiako said, I can't think of a better person to be leading the way for the next evolution of our media company. The Pacific Daily News has evolved into a full media provider, servicing the community with both print and digital content, as well as a range of marketing services, from traditional print advertising to all forms of digital marketing and custom publishing solutions. Jay Fogarty, Senior Vice President of Gannett, said, good riddance to the Guam Daily News. No, he didn't really say that.
He said, Guam who?
Yeah, Guam where? Daily News? He said, we thank Ree and all her staff for their important contributions to the Pacific Daily News and are delighted that Kaleo will be overseeing the vital mission of the paper for years to come. Moylan's commitment to Guam and the region, shown through his years of community service as a senator and lieutenant governor, will continue through his ownership of the Daily News. The media company will continue its legacy of local leadership and philanthropy and its long-standing support of many local organizations and community causes, as well as its high standards and ethical practices in journalism. Here's a quote. My grandfather, F.L. Moylan, to my father, Kurt Moylan, my brothers, Mickey and Troy. Our family has a long tradition of civic contribution. Yeah, Kaleo's father, Kurt, was the youngest person ever elected to the legislature, 25 years old. He was the last appointed Secretary of Guam and the first elected Lieutenant Governor of Guam, which was quite a distinction, really something to, it's kind of a headliner until Josh Tenorio came along. The acquisition of PDN allows us to strengthen our, as you were, strengthen our outreach and continue to be a positive contributor to the community. Moylan said he expects the local media company to continue to evolve under his ownership and continue its tradition of being the primary source of information on which the community can rely, which it was at one time. But they gave that all away, while it continues to share the living culture of our people. Yeah. All right, let's take a short break here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
76 Circle K, the Subaki Tower, and Spa Ayalam bring you another staycation. We are celebrating Mom and all she does. Win a 2-night stay at the luxurious Subaki Tower, get pampered by Spa Ayalam, and enjoy a delicious lunch and dinner at Casa Oceano. All you have to do is purchase $35 or more in 76 fuel and enter to win a staycation fit for a mom. The more you gas, the more chances of winning. Visit 76circlekguam.com or any Circle K location for more information.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Okay, next item on the card is the governor versus the budget. And we saw, I think it was yesterday, we had those 4 nicely contrasting stories on the front page of the Post, one of which dealt with the governor's fundraiser. The other 3 showed how bad our economy is. Like we're $25 million short on collections. We're way over budgeted. We didn't budget enough for some of the agencies, and we probably aren't going to bring in enough cash to cover those. So here's the the story in the Daily News. I'm sorry, the Daily News, silly me. The Post. Adelup announces 3 new appointments. So when you don't have a whole lot of money, the best thing to do is hire more employees. Governor Leon Guerrero announced 3 new appointments, including someone to handle social media. That's really important. I wonder if there's a nexus here. Yesterday, she had a $500 per head fundraiser that met in 3 platoons. And today she announces she's hired someone to do social media. Could there be any relationship between the two? Social media wasn't a big factor when I ran back in 2002. We were still radio, TV, etc. But I know that nowadays social media is really big as far as campaigning under normal circumstances. And as long as we have this quarantine Wuhan virus thing, it's even bigger. So Governor Leon Guerrero announced 3 new appointments, including someone to handle social media. That will certainly help us with the budget. A Department of Administration deputy director and a new policy director. Now, what does a policy director do? I think the last person that had that title turned out to be the 4th branch of government. Isn't that right?
I think so.
Yeah, so we've got a new 4th branch of government. So if Carlo Branch was an example of what the policy director does, it's his job to come up with sarcastic comebacks to anything the Republicans say. I think that's what the job description of a policy director is.
Isn't that a job opening for someone they want to place, but they don't know what title to give to them?
I suppose, and I will get to it later on in the story, whether this policy director has ever been convicted of official misconduct. That would be, of course, important. No, wait a minute. This is the governor's office. It's not the port. My bad. I misspoke, yeah. Okay, going on. Logan Regis, whose title is Digital Engagement Manager. A digital engagement manager.
Sounds like social media.
That's his job. Digital engagement manager.
Oh, he's the social media guy.
Yeah, so digital engagement, this is another one of those things that I comment on from time to time. A phrase where you know the meaning of each of the words, but when you put them together, it means something totally different. Digital, well, I have 10 of them, right? I have 10 digits, right? Not counting, if I took my shoes off, I got twice that many, right? Engagement, before you get married, engagement, right? Manager, imagus, right? Someone who bosses people around. So he's the digital engagement manager.
That's where a lot of these local police blotters are about guys who couldn't manage their digital media.
That's very true. Yeah, digital mismanagement, right?
Mismanagement.
Yeah. Logan Regis, whose title is Digital Engagement Manager, is a digital marketing professional. Digital. In other words...
That was out of camera.
yeah, I can't do that on camera. But it's a digital signal that you can use using only one of your digits. Yeah, but that would be marketing products that you really didn't like, I suppose, right? Logan Regis, whose title is Digital Engagement Manager, is a digital marketing professional with more than 10 years of experience. Regis will be responsible for developing implementing and managing digital engagement strategies to improve the distribution of information in digital channels like social media. You know what this paragraph sounds like? It sounds like something that a digital engagement manager would write. Because nobody else
Think of that paragraph.
nobody else could come up with this kind of stuff.
Sounds like Baghdad Bob.
Yeah.
Or Ministry of Propaganda.
Yeah. Logan Regis, whose title is Digital Engagement Manager, is a digital marketing professional with more than 10 years of experience. Regis will be responsible for developing, implementing, and managing digital engagement strategies to improve the distribution of information in digital channels like social media. Logan, don't bother calling Tall Tales. We do have a digital. We're on Facebook, but I don't think it's for you. Okay, so then next one we have is Bernadine, and her last name is tricky. I would pronounce it's Gines. I would pronounce it Hines. That would be the pronunciation using the orthography from Spain, Hines. But I got a feeling that some people would call her Bernadine Gines, and others might call her Bernadine Ginnis. But I guess the only thing I could say is her first name is Bernadine. Bernadine will serve as Deputy Director of the Department of Administration instead of being the Deputy Director of Administration, which is what her title really would be. Bernadette has 25 years of human resources management experience, both in the private sector and government, according to Adaloop. She has a background in employee relations, recruitment, compliance and regulations, employment benefits, budget managing, training programs, and union labor relations. Most recently, Bernadine served as the Census Office Manager for the 2020 Guam Census and led efforts to complete the decennial contract with the U.S. Census Bureau. Governor Leon Guerrero said, "I know we can count on Bernadine." Ricky Orsini. Where have we heard that name before?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Will serve as governor's policy director, fourth branch of government. Orsini has public policy experience as a former senior policy advisor who has helped execute policy agendas for the several legislative committees and offices in the 36th, 35th, 34th, 33rd, and 32nd Guam legislatures, Adaloop State. So she's a hanger-on at the legislature. I know that she worked for Fernando Esteves at one time, who was a Republican. I know that she's worked for Democrats. So I would classify her as a legislative hanger-on.
Lifer.
Yeah, and to go from one senator to another, one party to the other, and the key word in the lexicon of those hangers-on is pick me up. I wonder, I hope my senator doesn't get beat, but if they do, I hope someone will pick me up. Now, Michael Bavacqua, used to work for Kelly Marsh, Titano, but when she got beaten, apparently no one picked him up. So this time, Ricky Orsini struck gold because the governor's office picked her up. I guess to be the successor of the fourth branch of government. The release says Orsini is especially adept in policy development and drafting, such as she earned a Master of Public Administration degree from the University of Guam. You can't get much better education than that. Now, that's Ricky Orsini. While we have made tremendous progress with protecting the health of our people, we must begin the long road to recovery. That is why Josh and I had a fundraiser last night, $500 a head. No, that's not right. That is why Josh and I have enhanced our team to help us not only navigate these new challenges, but to embrace the opportunities before us. Each of them possesses the skills, knowledge, and experience to help my administration continue our mission to rebuild a better Guam, said Governor Leon Guerrero. Now, the fact that we're going to be paying him probably over $150,000 a year means nothing at all. You know, where else? You can't go out and hire a digital engagement manager, you know, for peanuts. Yeah, well, good work, Governor. Way to really economize and keep the expenses down. Okay, next item on the card is Therese versus GMH, but I'm going to take a short break first.
Half a day. This is Alicia Blas from Security Title, reminding you that your 2020 property taxes are now due and payable. You may not know that you can pay your taxes online at pay.guam.gov. All you have to do is follow these simple steps. Register, log in, get a PIN, and pay. If you purchased a property after March 2nd, 2020, you will likely not receive a tax bill in your name, but you will still owe the tax. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more. On demand. Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Okay, so here we are. We got about 8 more minutes till that big halftime show when I get a chance to get up, move around a little bit, have a conference with the production crew. Don't go anywhere, Jose.
I'll gather everybody.
All right. Next on the card, Therese versus GMH. And there are 2 stories here. One ran in the PNC and the other one in, both PNC. And one legislature health chair prioritizes nurse pay increase for GMH. The GMHA Nurse Recruitment and Retention Act of 2021, authorized by Health Oversight Chair Speaker Therese Terlahi and co-sponsored by Senator Joe San Augustine, had its public hearing Wednesday under the Committee on Appropriations. The measure proposes to address perennial nursing shortages at Guam Memorial, which have impacted the hospital's ability to maximize bed capacity in its ICU, emergency, and clinical areas. Recently, the GMHA Board of Trustees explored decreasing the 16% differential pay for nurses to 22% in order to achieve parity at Guam Memorial Hospital with competing nursing salaries on and off island. I wonder what this differential pay consists of. I didn't have a chance to do any research and find out. Any nurses listening, maybe you can let us know. However, additional funding was needed to implement this recruitment and retention strategy. I guess you could probably check with Ricky Orsini, who's in charge of policy over the governor's office, on where you could find that additional funding. The chairperson of the GMH board estimated that approximately $827,000 is needed annually to increase a 16% differential pay for RN and LPNs to 22%. unlike other nurse pay bills, 4236, fully funds this increase. The major proposes to redirect a portion of the GRMC annual community contribution mandated by the terms of their qualifying certificate for the sole purpose of increasing the nursing differential pay at GMH. The terms of the QC state that community contributions may benefit healthcare with a priority to GMH and DPHSS. Now, the thing that this paragraph leaves out is that the holder of the QC is I guess at GRMC, Guam Regional Medical Center. So this is what we're talking about here. We have this, I think, silly device that when a company is granted a GITA qualifying certificate, there's a forgiveness of taxes, but the recipient of the certificate has to donate a certain amount of money to some kind of charitable cause. And as a general rule, the certificate holder gets to decide what the charity is. So instead of paying taxes, we're giving the certificate holder the ability to dole out what ordinarily would be tax revenue. That doesn't make much sense to me. But that's the way the law is. And Therese Terlahi says, well, you take that money, and I don't care what you've been doing with it before, but you pour it into the general fund, and we're going to use it to give nurses a raise. Going on with the story, GITA would also retain $200,000 annually from the Guam Regional Medical City community contribution, which still could be dispersed to various nonprofits on the island through the Qualifying Certificate Community Contribution Grant Program. The discretion of these funds would fall under the purview of GITA. Now, here's where the pinch comes in. It's over $1 million that goes into this fund, and GITA has been doling it out to various nonprofits over the years. So when Therese comes along and introduces this bill and says, we're going to use most of this money to pay nurses, who ain't going to like it? Yeah, these nonprofits that have been getting this freebie up until now. With the general fund tracking $100 million below projections for this fiscal year, this is a quote, and the 2022 executive budget request proposing $0 from the general fund for GMH, no money for GMH at all, it's imperative that a tangible and stable source of funds is identified for nurse pay to shore up gaps in patient care, while long-term solutions to expand recruitment and retention are planned and executed, said Speaker Terlahi. It was also clear during discussions on the Nurse Licensure Compact that improving pay and work environment for nurses needed to be addressed concurrently with the implementation of the compact to stave off potential outmigration of nurses. So this is the other part of this puzzle. There is something called a Nurse Licensure Compact. Something like 30 states are members of it. And the way it works is, let's say Wisconsin is a member. If you are a certified nurse in Wisconsin, and you move to Nebraska, and Nebraska is a member of the compact, you can just jump right in and go to work without jumping through the usual license hoops. So I think it was Mary Torres that introduced this idea here that our nurses should become members of the Nurse Licensure Compact. Mary Torres said this would make it easier for nurses from the mainland to come here. Critics said, yeah, it'd make it easier for our nurses to go there, where the pay is better. Okay, I'm going to come back to the nurses right after that big halftime show that you've all been looking forward to for so long.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Reversing Trump policies. I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. President Biden has revoked a series of orders and memos from former President Trump, including one that sought to cut funding from several cities that Trump deemed anarchist havens following violent riots, and another mandating that federal buildings should be designed in a classical aesthetic. Meanwhile, Fox's Peter Doocy reports on the latest White House briefing, where he asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki about the Biden administration's migrant facilities.
Unaccompanied kids who cross the border while Biden is president are taken to the same kind of temporary federal facilities as unaccompanied kids who crossed the border while Trump was president, when Democrats accused Trump of putting kids in cages. So what's the more accurate description of this facility just reopened in Texas with prominently placed shipping containers?
Is it kids in containers instead of kids in cages?
These HHS facilities, we had to expand and open additional facilities because there was not enough space in the existing facilities. This facility in Texas, which has been reopened, has been revamped.
The president is also trying to patch up supply chains to stop shortages of batteries, ingredients for pharmaceuticals, and computer chips.
That's Fox's Peter Doocy. And the National Rifle Association has filed a lawsuit to counter one from New York State's Attorney General.
The NRA's action comes as New York's Attorney General Letitia James makes legal moves to dissolve the gun rights group. The NRA says it seeks to prove James does not have the legal authority to shut down a political entity. James' suit targets the organization and its top executive, Wayne LaPierre, for allegedly moving money donated for nonprofit use to fund expensive trips and other unintended expenses. The organization says James' suit violates a right to free speech and equal protection. The NRA takes the action after filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy last month.
That's Fox's Grenell Scott. America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Alicia Blas from Security Title, reminding you that your 2020 property taxes are now due and payable. You may not know that you can pay your taxes online at pay.guam.gov. All you have to do is follow these simple steps. Register, log in, get a PIN, and pay. If you purchased a property after March 2nd, 2020, you will likely not receive a tax bill in your name, but you will still owe the tax. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
You've heard of double mile credit card rewards? You can forget all about that. At First Hawaiian Bank, we're stepping it up. Not one, not two, not three, not even 4 times. You guessed it. First Hawaiian Bank is giving you 5 times the miles. Use your First Hawaiian Bank credit card and get rewarded 5 miles for every dollar spent with qualifying purchases at grocery stores. Plus 20,000 bonus miles. Learn more at any First Hawaiian Bank branch or go to FHB.com to apply today. First Hawaiian Bank, Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.
Well, research is being done in an effort to find more about the lingering symptoms of some COVID-19 patients long after their diagnosis.
Some of the symptoms include breathing problems, brain fog, and a general sense of malaise. Top infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci says some studies have shown nearly 1/3 of patients report symptoms lasting for months, making it more difficult to return to normal routines and work. Fauci says a critical issue is whether COVID-19 predisposes some patients to other medical problems later, such as conditions affecting the heart or brain. Well, now, following a grant from Congress, scientists with the National Institutes of Health are looking to enlist doctors and research institutions in the effort to learn more about long-haul COVID-19. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
Also new tonight, the Pentagon is ramping up the deployment of what federal authorities say could be up to 100 vaccination teams around the country. The U.S. military is beginning to deliver shots at coronavirus vaccination centers in Texas and New York, and says service members will start staffing 4 centers in Florida and 1 in Philadelphia next week. This as many states are now instituting their own coronavirus vaccination protocols.
1, 2, 3. When you can get your COVID shot in the U.S. may depend on where you live. At the top is Alaska, where 21% of the residents have gotten at least 1 shot. New Mexico is next at 20%, South Dakota 18%. Near the bottom are Georgia, Tennessee, and Utah, where only 11% have gotten the shot. Connecticut Democrat Governor Ned Lamont says federal guidelines on who gets the shot are too complicated, and starting next week, Anyone in his state over age 55 can sign up. Both Pfizer and Moderna are ramping up production, and with emergency approval for a third single-shot vaccine, Johnson & Johnson will be able to add 3 to 4 million doses next week and 20 million by the end of March.
That's Fox's Steve Harrigan. I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Hey, big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Sunday brunch at Mezcla Bistro in Hagåtña is back.
Come and enjoy Mezcla's true taste of Guam.
At only $28.95, enjoy your Sunday with your friends and family with their free-flowing house mimosa or house draft beer. Open for 2 seatings at 10:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m.
Let Mezcla serve up your favorite local foods. Call them at 479-2652
or 479-2653 to book a reservation. Limited seating available.
Mezcla reminds everyone to be safe and stay sanitized. Sunday brunch at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Okay, we're talking about Therese versus GMH, Therese Verlahe and the hospital, and nurses' pay is a subject. And I mentioned that I talked about Therese Verlahe's bill. It's called the GMHA Nurse Recruitment and Retention Act. That would raise nurses' pay by taking money from what I refer to as the GITA slush fund that accumulates from payments made by companies that have GITA certificates, who pay into this slush fund small amounts that GITA can disperse to nonprofit organizations. And Therese wants to take that money and use it to pay nurses. This gets tied into the GMHA, as we're to the to the reciprocal nurses compact that is suspected of causing, the nurse licensure compact that some people think will cause a quick out-migration of Guam nurses to the mainland, where they can be, if we were in this compact, they could be certified without going through the usual procedures and make a lot more money than they make on Guam. So the Nurse Licensure Compact, the Mary Torres Project, and Therese's attempt to take the GITA slush fund and use it for nurses' pay raises seem to be cut from the same cloth. Introduce the Nurse Licensure Compact, get people thinking about nurses leaving, nurses shortage, et cetera, nurses not making enough money, and then figure out some way to pay nurses more money. Therese Terlahi says Bill 42-36 provides a 15-year funding bridge for the government of Guam and GMH to build a more sustainable model for patient care, which starts with keeping local nurses on Guam. Well, that may very well be true, but the hospital is not the only place where nurses work. And we have another story here in PNC. GMH approves increased incentive pay for nurses as RNs leave for the mainland. So they apparently didn't need Therese Terlahi's bill. The Guam Memorial Hospital has approved Resolution 2021-20, which increases the incentive pay for registered nurses and licensed practical nurses from 16% to 20%. According to GMH Board Acting Chair Melissa Weibel, the resolution is aimed at getting GMH nurses more pay that is similar to everywhere else. This would be moving it from 16% to 20%, which still puts us below the national average, but still does a little bit more. This is part of that recruitment retention process and plan that GMA is doing while we're waiting for the legislature to help, Weibel said during the GMH Board of Trustees meeting Thursday night. The resolution covers all non-critical care nurses and all other RNs in the medical, pre-med, surgical, and OB ward. Glynis Almonte, a GMH board trustee and former president of the Guam Nurses Association, said she supports the resolution because this is needed to prevent nurses from leaving Guam. We should support our nurses because I know a lot of nurses in the past and maybe at present are leaving now that they hear that they will get paid higher if they move to the States during this pandemic time. I've heard some nurses are moving out again from our system. So this resolution will be good for the community, not only for GMH, but for the whole island. Weibel added that with the recent passing of the nurse licensure bill, that's the one I talked about, Guam nurses are now allowed to go to the mainland to work in states that are participating in licensure compact. Stateside nurses who have multi-state license will be able to come here, but will also mean that our nurses on Guam who will have a multi-state license can easily move to the States to work. So we've got to start working now to create reasons for those nurses to want to stay. Now, I contrast the two approaches. Therese Terlahi Therese Terlahi points out that the 2022 executive budget request for the hospital proposes $0 for the hospital. No money at all from the general fund. Now, we know that the hospital does take in some money. It bills patients, it bills insurance companies, it bills Medicare. Has it ever been enough? Not in the memory of man has it ever been enough. So the hospital, there always has to be more money dumped into the hospital from the general fund because the hospital is not self-sustaining. So Therese says, I really want to help the nurses. I found this slush fund over here at GITA. We'll take the money from that slush fund. We'll give the nurses a raise. Probably saying to herself, I know a lot of those nonprofits are going to be really angry at me, but so be it. And then the hospital comes along and says, we're going to raise the salaries. We're going to raise them from 16% to 20%, raise that incentive pay, without mentioning where the money is going to come from. Now, are we playing a little game of tit for tat here? Is Therese Terlahi trying to take a shot at the governor by saying, I'm going to find money for those nurses no matter what, even if I got to raid the GITA slush fund? And moments later, the hospital comes back and says, we're going to give them a raise. And interesting, and that's why this is on the card as Therese versus GMH. It should actually be GMH versus Therese, shouldn't it? Yeah. Because Therese says, I found this way of doing it because I know the general fund is really in bad shape. And I know we haven't appropriated, the budget doesn't appropriate any money for the hospital. But I want to do something for the nurses, so I'll raid the Gita slush fund. Hospital says, no. The hospital says, forget about it. We already got the money. Yeah, very interesting.
We'll print it.
Yeah. Okay, next item on the card is Biden, HHS, Health and Human Services nominee, defended subjecting kids to chemical castration. Now, this is Dr. Rachel Levine, and if you can't remember what she looks like, here's Dr. Rachel Levine's picture.
That behind that.
Yeah, that's Dr. Rachel Levine there in the long hair and glasses. And the story says, Pennsylvania Health Secretary Rachel Levine, born Richard Levine. I don't think they even need to say that, do they?
I don't think so.
One picture is worth 1,000 words. President Joe Biden's pick for Assistant Secretary of Health at the Department of Health and Human Services has long defended experimental transgender, quote, treatments for children. Levine, who identifies as transgender, has refused to say whether or not he has undergone medical interventions for his own gender identity. Nobody's business but his. Telling the WAPO in 2016 that such treatment is a private matter. Levine, a pediatrician who worked for Penn State Hershey Medical Center from 1993 to 2015 and who teaches pediatrics and psychology at Penn State College of Medicine, pediatrics and psychology, has given lectures on how to perform sex changes on children since at least 2012, the National Pulse reported. In 2014, Levine argued that adults should give children latitude to choose their genders. Yeah. He coached adults, try not to force them one way or the other. I guess that's what you call choice, huh?
Not forcing them.
Yeah, freedom of choice. In 2017, Levine recommended cross-sex hormones for children in their mid-teens. According to a video of his speech obtained by the National Pulse, Levine warned about the dangers of going through, quote, the wrong puberty, and encouraged hormones to prevent the natural process of adolescent development. Now remember, this is somebody that Joe Biden is in the process of appointing to Health and Human Services.
How is a chemical a natural process?
National Pulse, Levine warned about the danger of going through the wrong puberty and encouraged hormones to prevent the natural process of adolescent development. So what if you're going through the wrong puberty? What if you're a transgender young woman, meaning male to female, and now your voice is dropping, you're getting bigger, and you're getting hair everywhere, and you're growing those testicles? And what if you're a transgender young man, and now you have breast development you're experiencing? It's terrifying, Levine argued. These things are terrifying. You know, of course, I can remember going through this myself. Just barely. You know, your memory tends to fade as you get older. I was so terrified. Yeah. Levine lamented that basically there was no treatment for individuals that were under 18 under earlier guidelines. By 2017, however, new transgender guidelines approved the use of experimental drugs that supposedly block the onset of puberty and cross-sex hormones. Levine noted that children's hospitals still do not encourage these kinds of treatments for pre-pubertal children, but the changes at the onset of puberty. That changes at the onset of puberty. The first phase at the young adolescent age is to give what they call a pubertal blocker, medicine to block the progression, low doses that you gradually increase, Levine explained. The treatment supposedly ensures that, quote, that they never go through the wrong puberty. That way, for a transgender woman, male to female, their voice doesn't drop. They don't have hair. For a transgender man, they don't have breast development. They don't have periods. This is medical science at its best. So you block puberty, and then you can, at the appropriate time, send them into puberty consistent with their gender identity. You know, it's a shame we got to talk about this on the radio. But I want everybody out there in our international radio listening audience to understand this is the left. This is identity politics. This is intersectionality. This is the President of the United States pushing this kind of stuff. Research shows that there are significant risks with sex assignment surgery, including heart conditions, increased cancer risk, and loss of bone density. Some endocrinologists have warned about the negative effects of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. I call it a development blocker. It's actually causing a disease. Dr. Michael Laidlow, an independent private practice endocrinologist in Rockland, California, who consults with Sutter Roseville Medical Center, told PJ Media, the disease in question is hypogonadotropic hypogonadism. It's got gonads in it somewhere there. I thought when I first read this, I thought maybe they were talking about Jerry Nads Nadler. It occurs when the brain fails to send the right signal to the gonads to make the hormones necessary for development. While endocrinologists, doctors who specialize in hormones in the endocrine system, are familiar with the disease and gladly treat it when a patient has been diagnosed, many of them are effectively causing their patients to contract the same disease in an attempt to affirm gender identity. An endocrinologist might treat a condition where a female's testosterone levels are going to be outside the normal range. We treat that, and we're aware of metabolical problems. At the same time, an endocrinologist may be giving high levels of testosterone to a female to transition her. There is no evidence that transgender surgery improves mental health outcome of gender dysphoric people. Men and women who formerly identified as transgender and underwent surgery have grown to reject transgender identity and lament the damage they did to their own bodies. By nominating Levine for a key HHS Health and Human Service post, Biden has sent a dangerous message about transgenderism in medicine. Medicine of all fields should follow the science. Isn't that what Democrats say they do? Follow the science of biological sex over unclear notions of transgender identity. After all, Levine himself acknowledged that the causes of gender identity, which he defined as who you feel inside, remain unclear. The hypothesis that I will give you is that the organic basis of gender identity is the expression of neurodevelopment of the brain, which is biological, as opposed to a competing hypothesis that this is somehow physiological or developmental, Levine said in 2017. By contrast, biological sex is male or female and it traces back to the X and Y chromosomes in the DNA. Biological sex determines how human beings develop from the womb to the tomb. Some medicines work well for women when they don't work well for men, and vice versa. Yet Biden, Levine, and the rest of the transgender establishment are consciously muddying the waters of well-established biological fact. This carries significant consequences for the field of medicine, and it bodes ill for gender-confused people and for the rest of the people who live in this country. Okay, I notice I've got somebody waiting here in the on-deck circle. That would be our Carl, the most dangerous man in the room. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Good afternoon, Bob. I was thinking of changing James Howard's name he gave me to the most inquisitive man in the room, but it doesn't quite have the same ring.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't work well with the intro either.
No, it does not. Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in on this. Just this stand for this candidate, that President Biden, still hurts to say that, wants to put in that position for this post, should be rejected just for that. And the reason is, what you've brought up is that the utter devastation this stand has caused for thousands upon thousands of young people. When I was a teenager, I remember the angst that I was going through, and trying to figure out life, and I was going through depression and just all kinds of internal turmoil. And that's the worst time in the world for someone to decide they want to take chemicals or have a surgical procedure done, which is irreversible. And there are thousands and thousands of these young people who have had these procedures done, and now they want to back out, and it's too late. It's done. It's permanent, and it just shows a tremendous callousness toward these thousands of young people, and absolute commitment to advancing the agenda at all costs.
And of course, if you understand the agenda, you know that facts no longer matter. It's the narrative that counts, and it's the narrative of the individual people. So mathematics, 2 and 2, it doesn't necessarily equal 4. X doesn't necessarily mean a woman. So as serious as the problems this Richard Levine will create in his new post, he's only a symptom of a much greater problem, that we would have a president who would even think about appointing a nutcase like this to an important position, Carl.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in for the, just the devastation that this stand is causing to people, and it's totally not acknowledged, because it's politically incorrect to acknowledge that this is going on, this immense damage to people's lives. And this just on this alone, this candidate should be rejected. This just is not a good thing. It's really not. But advancing the agenda, this utopian vision is it's like a religious devotion, and it just amazes me how far people are willing to go to advance that utopian vision at any price.
If you're not woke, you don't count for anything, Carl.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm reading a little bit about the the early history of the Communist Party and Lenin and Stalin, and it's just shocking. The utter just the blinders that people put on to advance toward this utopian vision. It's
You refer to the utter blindness? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at something that Jose put on Facebook here. Here's what he picks up on that same word. He said, Jose Martinez said, I heard of a cow that went through transgender surgery. It was utter devastation. You don't get to be the producer on Tall Tales unless you got talent.
Who's typing that?
Anyhow, I get your point, Carl. So we got to remain vigilant. We got to keep it up. And there's nothing stopping anybody from going to Jungle Watch and posting these really important comments on Jungle Watch so that they'll have staying power and literally be broadcast to the world. It's our job. The only thing that's standing between us and utter lunacy is ourselves. So we all have a mission. But thanks for calling, Carl.
Okay, Bob. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, so let me see who I've got in the green room here. I've got R. James, and then we're going to go to Wrigley Field, R. James, and we're going to come right back to you.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile Team. Suite 119 in the East-West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile Team.
They make smiles happen.
Okay, Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois, and I went into the men's room here while I was at Wrigley Field, and I found, you know how people are always so willing to write stuff on the wall in the men's room. You ever notice that?
He'd tell me he wasn't.
I don't know if the ladies' room is the same way. Although I guess I could find out now.
Legally.
Yeah, legally, no problem. But I went into the men's room, and this is what I saw scribbled on the wall in the men's room at Wrigley Field. Your hair you may dye and makeup apply, but you cannot deny the X and the Y. Richard Levine. Yeah. Okay, so let me see what R. James has got for us here today. Good afternoon, R. James.
How's it going, Bob?
Good.
Well, you know, along the same lines as this crackpot that calls himself a pediatrician and I guess a psychologist that is preaching this kind of ilk. I mean, I guess only a psychologist could preach the kind of ilk. But, you know, like I've mentioned before, I made the comment probably more than a couple of times that this is the biggest psychological warfare operation that's ever been mounted in the history of our world. And we're not doing it to another country because of a war or a combat that we're involved in. They're doing this to us. They're doing this to the American people. And this is not about Republican or Democrat. This is not about right or left. This is about common sense. And if you don't have enough common sense to know that you need to educate and self-educate and kind of, you know, the old saying, don't take anybody's word blindly for anything, this is what they want and this is what they're getting. I mean, have you heard about the Coca-Cola company requiring the
Robin
training?
The Robin DiAngelo training. Be a little.
Exactly.
Try to be less white.
Yeah. Try to be less white, and they have required all of their employees to go through this. And upon seeing what this type of training involved, some of the employees, it sounds to me like maybe quite a few of them said, "Whoa, wait a minute, I don't agree with this." And it's my understanding, I could be wrong, probably need to be fact-checked here, but it's my understanding that a number of the employees have been terminated because they refused to go through that training, and other employees were threatened with being terminated if they didn't go through the training. And here again, probably need to be fact-checked, but I'm hearing that there are now lawsuits being filed against Coca-Cola because of hostile workplace environment and all, the other stuff that goes along with it. At what point does everybody with any common sense just lay it all out on the table and just say, no more, no? There's not really anything to discuss here. On most things, where there's a problem, where there's a disagreement, where there's a legitimate issue involved, there's always room to sit down and talk and discuss and, negotiate and sit down and have a reasonable, adult, educated conversation. But there's not really, this is one of the few things that I'm going to put into the basket of, no, there's not any compromise here. This is so idiotic. This is so crazy. This is so far into the twilight zone. I swear to God, I'm just waiting for Rod Serling to walk up and step out of the door. At what point do we, the people with some common sense, just say, no, not anymore, no more, that's it?
Well,
because
James,
it's gone too far.
James, I'm going to go back to the same thing. We do it every single day, and one of the ways that we can do it is we can go to Jungle Watch, and we can post these comments. They can be related to Tall Tales, or they could just be freeform. And we start getting this message out that, drink Pepsi, for crying out loud. Drink anything.
Yeah, my grandmother used to say, if you've got any constitution whatsoever at all, you'll do this or you won't do that. And you know what? Now I'm going to have to actually take more of my time, and I'm going to have to sit down probably tonight, because this is how strongly I feel about it, and I'm going to have to research what all Coca-Cola Company owns, because I drink a 6-pack of Diet Coke a week. I have an average of one a day, and I have probably for the last 20 years, but today is my last day. I'm not purchasing any more Coca-Cola products. And if Coca-Cola owns Pizza Hut and Taco Bell, I'm not going to their restaurants anymore. And if I walk into a restaurant and they only serve, if I have no option other than water or iced tea, and if I don't feel like I'm in a water or an iced tea mood, and they only offer Coca-Cola products, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to leave that establishment. That is how strongly I feel about how, the idiocracy of this has gone. And I have some constitution. I can live the rest of my life without ever touching another Coke product again, and it won't bother me.
But let's get the word out too, or James. I mean, if one person stops drinking Coke, that's kind of like getting out there and belching at thunder. I mean, it's doing something. But
and the hard butt kind of a guy that I am, I won't allow it to be brought into my home anymore. If my kids want to drink Coke, they'll fine, go someplace else, but don't put it in my refrigerator. That's how strongly I feel about anti-craziness, okay? And whether that craziness is be less white training that's being forced on people at the threat of losing their jobs and their livelihood, or whether it's all of this, tear down everything and reset, and the Constitution needs to be stricken. That's how anti all of that craziness I am, and I'll stick to it. But yeah, I'll swing over to Jungle Watch and I'll make a comment.
Good. You could add a lot to Jungle Watch, R. James. You're a cogent, intelligent commenter, and we just need to see more of you. So I think that'd be great if you could.
Yeah, I really, I mean, at some point, this is really going to have to get reined in. Otherwise, it's, well, you know, I guess every generation I've heard every generation say, well, everything's going to hell because, you know, my grandfather used to say, you know, that damned rock and roll and this and that and whatever. But we're a little bit past Elvis gyrating up on the stage now, and we're into stuff that is really, really going to put us over the edge for the foreseeable future, if not period, because together we stand, divided we fall, and it looks to me like that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to divide everyone to the point where we're no longer capable of standing up and making a reasonable, common sense decision.
You're absolutely right, R. James, and I'm glad you called up and put your finger on that. So I'll see you on Jungle Watch, okay?
All right. Thanks, Bob. Have a good one.
You too. Well, yeah, this whole Richard Levine thing, it just, how much crazier can we get? This guy, you know.
Sounds like a challenge, and I'm sure it'll be met.
Really. I stopped asking the question, how stupid can you be? Because some people do see it as a challenge. But R. James put his finger on something, you know, every generation goes through it, you know. My generation, rock and roll came out when I was a junior in high school. Bill Haley and his Comets, Rock Around the Clock, Blackboard Jungle.
Those were dangerous times.
They really were. And society always adjusts and adapts and comes along, but this time is really different.
This is this is about mutilation. This is about just changing things, not just on the surface.
It's about changing people's whole thought process. So this whole cultural racism, critical race theory, the identity politics, the whole thing, it's a complete destruction of the thought process. And it's worked so well because the seeds were planted in the 60s, and probably the executives at Coca-Cola are the guys that got this virus when they were young, going to university in the 60s or 70s. Now they know how to do things. And that's what we're up against. So I got a little bit of good news here. I have actually a fundraiser from an outfit called Young Americans for Liberty. And I put this on the card as YAL versus BLM. And it's a note to me, Robert, one of our greatest challenges is growing our movement and recruiting young people to the cause of liberty. I'm afraid that if we fail to act quickly and recruit younger pro-liberty leaders, our movement is destined to fail. My name is Sean Themia. I was once an Obama supporter. Forgive me. But now I'm hardcore constitutionalist and serve as the leader of Young Americans for Liberty, the nation's largest and most active pro-liberty student organization. Let me tell you my story and how YAL is converting thousands of apathetic, independent, and even left-wing students into hardcore pro-liberty activists. It sounds like good news to me. In 2012, I was living in New Hampshire and supported President Obama. I started drifting away from the Democrat Party when I realized how their agenda was destroying our economy and adding trillions to the national debt. I also started listening a little closer to just how radical some of my college professors' ideas were and grew disillusioned with their insistence that the American dream was dead. Fortunately, there was a group on campus presenting alternatives to the siren song of socialism. YAL student leaders relentlessly tried to recruit me to their student organization, and I finally decided to check it out. All of a sudden, I was learning about free markets in the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, our Second Amendment rights, and civil liberties. I was inspired. I now knew that liberty was the answer, and I knew that if I didn't take a stand for what I believed in, I would regret it. That's when everything changed. I went all in and decided to commit my life's work to fighting for principles of liberty, restoring our republic. And YAL was there for me every step of the way. My story is like so many others. That's why this year, Young Americans for Liberty is launching Project 1776. YAL's plan is to recruit 100,000 new pro-liberty students to the ideas of liberty on college campuses across the country. This effort is desperately needed if we wish to grow our movement and restore our republic. Now, if there's anybody out there who is enrolled in the University of Guam and is interested in this at all, leave your phone number with Jose, and I'll see if I can't get you connected with this organization. I'll give you an address or something like that. But this is the first good news I've seen coming out of any college campus in a long, long time. Instead of the cultural, as you were, the critical race theory, the identity politics, and all the rest of the junk that seems to have found a home on our campuses. Okay, I'm going to head for Churchill Downs, and on the way out of Churchill Downs, I'm a little hungry, so I'm going to drive through the drive-through at McDonald's. I wouldn't be surprised if I found drive-through Jack sitting in there talking to the waitress who's taking his orders as though he were talking to Tall Tales.
76 Circle K, the Subaki Tower, and Spa Ayalam bring you another staycation. We are celebrating Mom and all she does. Win a 2-night stay at the luxurious Subaki Tower, get pampered by Spa Ayalam, and enjoy a delicious lunch and dinner at Casa Oceano. All you have to do is purchase $35 or more in 76 fuel and enter to win a staycation fit for a mom. The more you gas, the more chances of winning. Visit 76circlekguam.com or any Circle K location for more information.
Sunday brunch at Mezcla Bistro in Hagåtña is back.
Come and enjoy Mezcla's true taste of Guam.
At only $28.95, enjoy your Sunday with your friends and family with their free-flowing house mimosa or house draft beer. Open for 2 seatings at 10:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m.
Let Mezcla serve up your favorite local foods. Call them at 479-2652
or 479-2653 to book a reservation. Limited seating available.
Mezcla reminds everyone to be safe and stay sanitized. Sunday brunch at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Okay, driving out of Churchill Downs on a long, long drive all the way to Guam. And as I'm driving down the road, I say to myself, Bob, you deserve a break today. And I pull into the drive-thru at McDonald's, and who do I find in there? You know, drive-thru Jack, I'm surprised that sometimes when I answer the phone, you don't say a cheeseburger or a fish witch, order of fries, Coca-Cola, start ordering from me. Because I suspect there are times when you drive through the drive-thru and talk to the waitress in there that takes your order as though you're talking to me.
Well, Bob, it's lunch season, and, you know, our families, my family is at least trying to make ends meet. So not as much drive-thru, but more like at those sales that they're having at Quality Distributor. And there's one this Saturday at Triple J Wholesale. They're having a case lot sale. So, yeah, I need to find some ways to you know, cut the cost as powers.
Well, that's important, Jack, but not as important as the entertainment value of your trips through the drive-thru.
Well, speaking of drive-through, I think they try to make a drive-through to Jerry's Kitchen down there at the corner of
Drive up.
Yeah. Jerry's Kitchen took this whole pandemic thing about as far as you could take it, right?
Yeah, and I was wondering if they ever catch that guy or that lady that did that. I was wondering if they tested positive for COVID, whether or not that will be a COVID-related business closure.
Yeah. Well, if you were so unfortunate as to pass away, it would definitely be a COVID death, right?
I know, but even if they tested positive for COVID, the business can be maybe qualified for.
That's right. Well, no, actually, if she tested positive for COVID, the business could be fined because they weren't observing the 6 foot distance and mask and all of those rules, right?
They didn't take her temperature first.
They didn't take her temperature. They just let any old buddy drive in there.
Yeah, so I was wondering about that, and I was listening to you, and of course you remember Ralph Nader, right?
Uh-huh.
You remember when the Green Party meant something different?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and when you heard Ralph Nader, he made sense. And you compare what Ralph Nader did and, how he led his life or how he's leading his life nowadays, compared to people like AOC and the New Green Deal, and especially John Kerry when he made that, well, I fly a private jet because, do as I say, not what do they do. When he made that excuse, I said, things have changed, but people really haven't. But, you missed those dialogues that, at one point in time, the Green Party or the Green whatever position, made some sense. But now it's just I haven't a clue what they're saying or what they're doing. And it's like a pie in the sky stuff. And it's just it's a different philosophy. It's not the Green Deal or the Green Party that we knew back in Ralph Nader's days. And so
here's a Ralph Nader vignette. I read an article about Ralph Nader. Ralph did a hitch in the Army. And when he got out of the Army, he purchased 12 pairs of Army Oxfords, Army shoes, to take with him because he thought for the price they were as good a shoe, price and quality, they were as good a shoe as you could get. And he wore those, and it took him 25 years to go through those Army shoes. So, the classic case of not only talking the talk, but literally walking the walk.
Yeah, and I think he still does. I think he still does do that, and you just miss that kind of dialogue, and he. But anyways, I also called because I heard you earlier talking about, is it Logan Regis and his new position?
Uh-huh.
And I was thinking, I think the Gov Guam, these positions, I guess they get paid like $10,000 per syllable, right?
More than likely. They're as bad as lawyers in that respect.
I think it's $10,000 or $5,000 per syllable in the title or position that they hold. I think that's how the pay scale is judged by. So I was just wondering what it is that these positions and these titles. It sounds like the title's longer than how much hours they spend working doing their job a day. So I don't know.
Yeah, he answers the phone once and it's quitting time.
Oh man! But anyways, the bars I guess opened yesterday, and I did stop by, support a local venue, a little bar, a hole in the wall that probably COVID will be too scared to walk into. and I had a drink or two, and then I just waited and ate something, and went home. But yeah, it's kind of different. But I feel like I just think that things aren't or won't be returning to normal anytime soon. And even if they do, there's nothing that's going to be learned. It's more of a loss. It's just something missing in these bars opening. It just doesn't feel the same. But anyways, I'm just wondering what else is out there that we're supposedly looking forward to. And I think today I've contemplated on your issue about career politicians. And I don't really have a problem with them because I think career politicians, because they're elected by the people, politicians are just reflection of the polity that elects them. So I'm not a problem with that. But the politicians I am worried about are those institutional politicians. And I think you rattled some of them over the beginning of your show. The pick-me-up kind of people. Is that what you call them?
Oh, yeah. Hope somebody pick me up, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and those that were once in the legislature and then they took another government position and stuff like that. They just kept the cycle going. It's those career politicians that I really I'm not worried about because those are elected, while the institutionalized politicians, those people they're just like that stain you can't get out of your shirt, you know?
Yeah.
It's a good pair of shirt. You can't find it anywhere else because they don't do double seams and stuff like that. And it's a good quality shirt. You don't want to get rid of it, but you're left with that big stain on it or that small stain or that irritating stain.
That's why I'm really careful in the morning. I only wear coffee-proof shirts, Jack.
Yeah, and we wear the same things. I like the polo shirts, the straight style, nothing flamboyant. It's comfortable. You sweat in it. It feels good. You know,
dark color, so if you spill coffee on it, it's not that noticeable.
Yeah, I learned that, but I kind of like light colors too. But yeah, you know, we adjust to what we can do. And then I worry about these, like the fundraiser. What's fun about it? There's nothing fun about these raisers anymore. I don't know, Bob. It's just it's difficult for me to get angry right now. At the same time, it's difficult for me to accept what's going on. But like you said, you know, it seems like whatever science is whatever the left wants it to be, and they reject everything else. But what can we say? We do what we can do. We teach, we learn, and we live. But it's Lent season, and you know the hard part is forgiving. And you know I roared sometimes bad about Rory. He leaves a bad taste in my mouth. He, you know, not a bad taste. It's more like a bad aura. He feels like 1 o'clock on a Monday afternoon. You know, he feels real muggy every time. But I'm trying to let it go. You know, I'm trying to let it go. But it's kind of hard to do, and it's something that I need to work on. I carry a grudge. I don't put that many people around me. It's like I said before, you know, I make friends with people that I know that could be in a foxhole with me when it comes to the issue, when it comes to, you know, positions, when it comes to, hey, you need a helping hand. I put people in the same context that I like to be judged on. But I'm not a social media person. I'm not as much of a social person itself. I'm more like a Henry David Thoreau. And I don't know, maybe that's probably a downside or a bad side that has about me, but what can you do? I'm at that age where you can't teach an old dog a new trick, but you can always rely on him to get the paper and your shoes.
Yeah, hey, like, Jack, I got to help you out with something here. This is Tall Tales, not KOLG.
Well, you know.
Your confession is appreciated.
Sorry about that, Jack.
I have to. I can't go to confession anywhere else.
Well, we're glad to have you on board today. Always nice to talk to you, Jack.
All right.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
No longer a state of anarchy. I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. President Biden has formally revoked a memo signed by former President Trump that sought to cut funding from several cities that Trump deemed anarchist places. It was issued in September to identify cities that permit anarchy, violence, and destruction in American cities following riots during anti-police and anti-racism protests over George Floyd's death. This as city leaders in Minneapolis plan increased security around key buildings in advance of the upcoming trial of Derek Chauvin, the former police officer charged with Floyd's murder.
The main focus is prevention. Prevention of property damage, arson, and looting.
Minneapolis Police Department Deputy Chief Eric Force promising the city will be fully prepared for whatever the upcoming murder trial of Derek Chauvin brings in the way of civil unrest and potential mayhem out in the streets. This week, fencing and fortification efforts ramping up downtown and really across the entire city, including police precincts, should they become targets as they did in the immediate aftermath of George Floyd's deadly arrest.
That's Paul Bloom with Fox affiliate KMSP reporting. Chauvin's trial is scheduled to start March 8th. And a Stand Your Ground bill heads to the governor's desk in Arkansas.
The bill could make it easier to argue that deadly force was necessary for self-defense. It loosens existing restrictions in Arkansas by removing the duty to retreat before lethal force is used. Supporters of the bill say prosecutors in the state already don't take that into account. But opponents say the change will adversely affect minorities and that the state's existing self-defense laws are good enough. The Republican-led House passed the measure overwhelmingly, sending it to Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson, just weeks after a House panel had rejected the same bill. A similar measure stalled 2 years ago.
That's Fox's Lisa Brady. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, it's Kennedy Saves the World.
There should be a proliferation of voices. There are proliferation of voices within the libertarian movement. There are libertarians who have strong disagreements with each other. You know what they do? They have little symposiums and they argue about it. They don't go